They told you it's just salt, just water, just a toilet. Ordinary things, too plain to carry meaning. But here is the hidden truth: some of the most powerful rituals on earth disguise themselves in the ordinary. Not in temples, not in sacred groves, not in chants whispered under the moon, but in the quiet acts no one else notices. When you drop salt into water, especially into the toilet, you are not merely disposing of a mineral. You are declaring to life itself, "I let go." You cleanse not just your space, but your state. For centuries, monks, warriors, healers, and mystics understood this principle. Salt, by its very nature, absorbs. It takes into itself what the mind clings to: resentment, fear, fragments of regret. And when it is dissolved and flushed away, the unseen burden leaves with it. In ancient Shaolin practice, before meditation, before combat, before breathwork, there was always purification. Not just of the body, but of intention. Because the mind, clouded with yesterday's ghosts, cannot meet today with clarity. Salt water flowing, releasing, carries more than physical matter, it carries a vow. A vow to shed, to reset, to remember. This is not superstition. It is a sacred psychology, a language older than words, where the body speaks to the spirit through symbols. You are not just flushing a substance. You are flushing a pattern. Every time you perform the act with presence, you send a message into your own subconscious: I do not need to carry this any longer. Across wisdom traditions, this principle repeats. The law of vibration tells us that everything carries frequency. Salt has long been recognized as a stabilizer of vibration, a purifier of energy fields. In the East, it clears stagnant qi; in the West, it guards against malign spirits. In both, it is a bridge, an anchor between the heavy and the light. Water, too, is never just water. It is the eternal gate, the primordial mirror. It remembers everything it touches, it reshapes according to intention. Science shows us how water's crystalline patterns shift when blessed, when cursed, when sung to. Mystics knew this long before microscopes. They treated water as a companion, a witness, a flowing scripture of the earth. So when salt meets water and both are guided by your awareness, an alchemy begins. You are not simply discarding waste. You are retraining your nervous system, your soul's memory. You are reminding yourself that cleansing is always possible, that nothing clings forever unless you consent to hold it. Stay with me until the end, because this is not about one ritual. It is about a way of living, a way of remembering, a path of daily return. And when you begin to practice this not as a random act but as rhythm, you will feel the shift. Not in the outer world first, but within. You are not powerless. You have simply not been trained to see the power hidden in your own hands. But training begins here, in this moment. Most people believe that release ends with the body. That once the physical is expelled, the work is done. But the truth whispered in monasteries and among the wise is different: the body is only the doorway. Real release happens much deeper, where thoughts collect, where emotions harden, where silent stories replay in endless loops. Each day, without hesitation, you flush away what your body no longer needs. Waste is waste, it doesn't belong inside. But how many people keep emotional waste trapped within for years? Resentment fermenting like stagnant water. Regret whispering like an old ghost. Guilt circling the mind with claws that never let go. These burdens are heavier than flesh, yet people carry them as if they are sacred obligations. In Shaolin life, even cleaning was never just about surfaces. Sweeping the floor meant sweeping the mind. Washing the bowl was not only preparation for food, it was honoring the moment, bowing to presence. Nothing was trivial. Every act had a double life, one physical, one spiritual. So when you drop salt into the toilet and watch it dissolve, you are watching a mirror of your own mind. A simple choice becomes a declaration: I do not need to carry everything. I choose what stays. I choose what leaves. That freedom is not given to you by chance, it is exercised by intention. Salt has always been sacred because it holds paradox. It purifies by absorbing impurity. It preserves by holding decay at bay. It strengthens by stabilizing what would otherwise rot. In rituals across continents, salt became the unseen sentinel, in circles of protection, in offerings, in blessings. Yet here, in this small, personal act, it becomes something even more intimate, a dialogue between you and your own awareness. You are saying, I see what I've been holding, and now I release it. You are teaching yourself a new rhythm, one that treats emotional weight as naturally disposable as physical waste. This shift may seem subtle, but it is revolutionary. Imagine if every resentment could dissolve like grains of salt in water. Imagine if every hidden sorrow could flow down the drain, leaving only clarity. That is the promise of ritual. Not force. Not dramatic change. But small, consistent reminders that shape your spirit like waves sculpting stone. And here lies a deeper secret: when your mind begins to treat emotional weight like physical waste, something to be recognized, honored briefly, and then let go, freedom stops being an idea. It becomes a practice. Not lofty, not distant, but daily, embodied, and alive. This is where ancient wisdom meets the science of vibration. Thoughts held too long create density in your field. They loop, repeat, and become what people call curses, not fire, not chance, not external enemies, but quiet inner scripts that refuse to break. This always happens to me. I will never escape this. These are the real curses. Invisible chains forged from repetition. But every chain, no matter how strong, begins to weaken the moment you choose stillness. And every ritual of release, even one as small as salt dissolving, becomes a strike against the cycle. A curse is not always loud. It does not always arrive cloaked in fire, or in the words of someone wishing you harm. More often, it is quiet, a shadow hidden in repetition. The same mistake repeated. The same reaction triggered. The same story whispered in your mind, "This always happens to me." That story, that loop, is the true curse. Not an outside force, but an inner cycle feeding on itself. In Shaolin teaching, this was called a karmic wheel, a cycle of energy and action that turns endlessly until awareness breaks its grip. When you are unaware, the loop owns you. You rise in the morning and follow yesterday's script. You react in the same way, speak the same words, think the same thoughts. You wonder why nothing changes, yet you never question the invisible rhythm pulling the strings. But here is the secret: you do not break a loop by running faster inside it. You break it by stopping. Stillness is the first step of mastery. Not the absence of movement, but the presence of awareness. When you sit, breathe, and gaze inward without blame, without fear, the cycle begins to reveal itself. And once you see the pattern, you are no longer fully trapped inside it. You stand above it, like a mountain above clouds. This is why monks trained not only the body but the gaze of the mind. Every strike, every breath, every pause was an act of attention. They observed themselves with precision, each trigger, each habit, each reflex. They did not rush to fight the curse, they studied it. They traced its roots, its shape, its rhythm. And when the truth was clear, they did what no curse can survive: they chose differently. Not in anger. Not in panic. But with calm repetition. A new breath. A different word. A pause where reaction once lived. That is how a pattern dies. Piece by piece. Quietly. Through the discipline of presence. You don't need to shout at your demons. You don't need fire or force. You need only to stop feeding them. To let the ritual of release, salt, water, breath, remind you that stillness has its own kind of strength. Stronger than resistance. Stronger than noise. And in that stillness, where the old loop once lived, a new path quietly appears. Not cursed. Not chaotic. Just clear. Discipline, then, is not confined to temples or bells. It begins the moment you open your eyes. In how you place your feet on the ground. In how you breathe before rising. In how you carry the unseen weight or choose to release it. A Shaolin monk is not a monk only in the training hall. He is a monk while folding robes, while fetching water, while chopping vegetables in silence. That was the essence of the path. Nothing is too ordinary to be sacred. Every act holds the power to trap you in repetition, or to set you free. Nothing is too ordinary to be sacred. This is the lesson many overlook. People wait for perfect conditions, the right place, the right time, the right teacher. But the truth of the path is simpler, the practice is now. Always now. Even in something as simple as dropping salt into water, there is a choice. Will you rush through it, distracted, half-present? Or will you pause, feel the weight of what you're releasing, and honor the moment as a ritual? The sound of the flush is not just noise. It can be a bell of liberation, a sign that you are done carrying what was never yours to hold. That is the shift, from routine to ritual, from doing to being. The salt is not powerful on its own. It becomes powerful when it carries your intention. The water is not holy by itself. It becomes holy when you meet it with awareness. This is what mastery truly means. Not perfection, but presence. An inner silence that watches each act with care. When you carry mindfulness into the smallest movements, the world around you begins to transform. Not because the outer world suddenly changes, but because you have changed. The energy in your breath, your eyes, your hands radiates differently. And so even the most ordinary corner of your home can turn into a temple. Not because it looks sacred, but because you treat it as sacred. Thought without action is like a seed left in dry soil. It holds the potential of a tree but never grows. Action without thought is just noise, empty of meaning. Mastery lives at the meeting point between the two, where intention sharpens action, and action breathes life into intention. Salt in a jar is inert. A wish unacted upon is just vapor in the air. But when you lift that salt with steady breath, when you release it into water with awareness, when your mind and body move together, something unseen begins to shift. This is alignment. Not superstition. Not blind habit. Alignment of thought, breath, and motion. In ancient practice, no gesture was meaningless. A bow was humility, not just posture. A breath was presence, not just air. Every act carried weight because body and mind were never meant to be separate. One guides. One anchors. Together, they change the very frequency of your being. And with each act of alignment, trust grows. Trust in yourself, in your ability to release, in your capacity to return. You become reliable to your own spirit. That reliability builds a strength no one else can give you. Discipline is born in the body, but its roots grow in the mind. You train them together, not just on the training floor, but in silence, in the kitchen at night, when no one sees you. Especially then. Because that is the quiet strength that endures. Not loud. Not dramatic. But steady. Unshakable. A handful of salt. A slow breath. A calm whisper inside, I choose this. I release this. I return to center. Look around your space for a moment. The clutter on the floor, the dust gathering in corners, the objects left out of place, they all speak, not in words, but in vibration. When the outer world is tangled, the inner world rarely rests calm. And when the mind grows clouded, it begins to tolerate chaos as if it were natural. In Shaolin life, cleaning was never just for appearance. It was alignment. A swept floor was a swept mind. An ordered room was an ordered breath. A quiet corner was a refuge for the spirit. The environment was never seen as separate from the self. It was an extension, a mirror. It either supported stillness or disturbed it. So yes, salt in the toilet may seem like a small thing. Yet it belongs to something greater, a practice of energetic hygiene. A way of saying, I care for what is unseen. I clear what is stagnant. I release what no longer belongs, not just from my home, but from the subtle field around me, the aura, the energy that holds and shapes my life. This is not obsession. It is consciousness. Once you begin to notice, you see how noise hides in your environment. How a messy desk quietly builds tension in your shoulders. How an unwashed sink feeds frustration. The connection is undeniable. The external chaos is never neutral, it seeps into your inner state. And once seen, it cannot be unseen. You feel compelled to act. To sweep, to wash, to restore order. Not merely to make things look better, but to feel clearer, lighter, calmer. You open space not only in your home but also in your heart. You invite peace by removing what obstructs it. When this becomes rhythm, when care becomes a daily practice, your environment shifts from pulling you down to lifting you up. Your surroundings become silent allies, reminding you gently, peace is not discovered by chance. Peace is created, one act, one space at a time. This is where discipline reveals its truest gift. It is not about control. It is not punishment. It is the art of remembrance. To remember again and again, clarity fades when not refreshed. Dust always settles. Patterns always return. The mind left unattended drifts back to its noise. That is why we return to cleansing, not once, but daily. You cannot pour salt into water once and believe you are free forever. You cannot release grief once and assume it will never return. The world moves. Emotions rise. Old patterns resurface. So you reset, again and again. Not with struggle, but with rhythm. This is mastery, not one grand transformation, but steady return. Like waves smoothing stone, like breath softening the body, like salt dissolving into water. You become lighter not because the world changes, but because you train yourself to release consistently, consciously, calmly. Some days, the release feels small, a single breath, a handful of salt, a pause before speaking. Other days, it feels deep, as if you have poured out something ancient, something hidden in your bones for years. Both are the same path. Both are necessary. The key is not the size of the release, but the rhythm. To keep showing up. To meet yourself daily. To trust that each act, though small, is part of a greater transformation. This rhythm teaches you that freedom is not a prize you chase, not a mountain you climb once and conquer. Real freedom is alive, a living practice. It is not reached once and kept forever, it is chosen again and again. Every day. Every breath. Every act of letting go. In Shaolin discipline, nothing was practiced only once. Breath was taken again. Movement repeated. Silence returned to, day after day. Not because the lesson was forgotten, but because clarity fades when not renewed. The dust of the world settles quickly, the mind must be swept again and again. So too with cleansing. You cannot expect one ritual to carry you for life. You release today. Tomorrow you release again. Because life will stir you. Emotions will rise. Thoughts will stick. Patterns will whisper. And so you train not to escape disturbance, but to return from it. Not with resistance, but with rhythm. Like waves that slowly smooth the roughest stone, like seasons that shape the earth, this rhythm reshapes you. You become lighter, not because life spares you, but because you no longer hold on. You let flow what must flow. And here lies a paradox, what feels like repetition is actually transformation. Each act of release is not the same as the last. It carries a new layer, a new depth. You flush away not just the surface, but the root. One act at a time, the old weight thins, the fog dissolves, and you begin to live with a new kind of lightness. Some call this liberation. Others call it purification. In truth, it is both, the slow art of remembering that you were never meant to carry everything. That the burden is not the proof of your worth, but the cage of your forgetting. And so you return. Again and again. Salt. Water. Breath. Awareness. Each act a prayer, each release a song, each ritual a step deeper into your own freedom. When fear rises, most people look for escape. They turn on music, scroll endlessly, reach for distraction, anything to drown out the discomfort. In doing so, they push the darkness deeper, where it hides, where it waits, where it grows. But the ancient path taught a different response. When storms raged in the mind, when bitterness rose from the heart, the teaching was simple: sit. Be still. Breathe. Do not flee. Do not fight. Do not fix. Just allow what is heavy to rise fully, and leave. This goes against what we've been trained to believe. We're told that problems demand solutions, that pain must be avoided, that discomfort is an enemy. Yet the deepest healing often comes in silence, in stillness. When the story is no longer fed, when judgment is set aside, the darkness dissolves on its own. Salt becomes a symbol here, a vessel for what you are ready to let go of. Each grain represents the weight you've carried: bitterness, shame, old sorrow. Dropping it into water and flushing it away is more than action, it is declaration. You are telling your spirit, I name this. I release this. It no longer belongs here. But never forget, salt is only a tool. Water is only a gate. The true power is always presence. The courage to sit with yourself when the weight feels unbearable, when the storm is loud, when your instinct is to run. That courage transforms more deeply than any chant or charm. There is power in not reacting. In not rushing to explain, defend, or resist. There is strength in simply staying, breathing, allowing. This is the quiet courage of discipline, to hold the storm without being shaken, to remain steady while the waves crash. When you do this, you retrain your nervous system. You teach yourself, I do not need to fight. I do not need to flee. I am safe here. That message reshapes not only your mind but your entire field of energy. Presence becomes your shield. Stillness becomes your power. The storm always passes. What matters is whether you meet it with panic or with presence. Panic feeds it. Presence dissolves it. And slowly, you discover that the weight you feared was never as solid as it seemed. It was smoke, thick, suffocating, but incapable of staying when you stopped giving it air. So you sit. You breathe. You let it rise. And you let it go. Not through force. Not through drama. But through silence strong enough to hold the storm without fear. The real curse does not come from outside. It is not someone's envy, not words muttered in secret, not shadows following your path. The true curse is forgetting. Forgetting who you are when the noise grows loud. Forgetting your breath when fear tightens your chest. Forgetting your discipline when comfort tempts you to drift away. It begins slowly. You skip your practice once, then twice. You rush through your day without presence. You silence that quiet inner voice that knows truth. And little by little, distance grows, between you and your stillness, between you and your deeper self. That is how the curse takes root, not by magic, but by neglect. But here is the hidden mercy, it is always reversible. No matter how far you drift, one act of remembrance can call you back. One breath. One ritual. One moment of awareness can reconnect the broken thread. That is why rituals matter, not because salt or water hold power of their own, but because they awaken memory. They remind you of your power. A pinch of salt, a pause before speaking, a bow before sitting, these are signals to the mind, return. Wake up. Be here. In the ancient ways, discipline was never punishment. It was memory. The body remembers how to move. The breath remembers how to calm. The spirit remembers its path. And when you align with that memory, the fog lifts, the weight falls, and the curse dissolves. Each return makes you stronger. Every time you step back onto the path, you remember that you are not the fear, not the chaos, not the old pattern. You are the awareness behind it, the still point within it. The one who can begin again, no matter how far you have strayed. That is sovereignty. That is freedom. And freedom does not need to be loud. It does not shout. It reveals itself in quiet choices, how you breathe through discomfort, how you clean your space with care, how you release what no longer belongs. Even something as simple as dropping salt into water becomes a reminder, I am not trapped. I can begin again. You do not need perfect conditions. You do not need to wait for a sacred temple or a special day. All you need is the willingness to return. To make your life itself the temple. To make your silence your sanctuary. To make your presence your protection. So the next time the old pattern returns, the same thought, the same reaction, the same weight, do not meet it with fear. Do not rush to fight it. Simply notice it. Name it. And release it, again and again. Without drama. Without noise. Without resistance. This is the essence of the path, consistency, not spectacle. Liberation is not a sudden explosion, it is a steady unfolding. Each small act, repeated with presence, reshapes the foundation of your being. Salt in water, a breath in silence, a pause before speaking, these are not empty gestures. They are threads that reweave the fabric of your life. The world teaches you to seek freedom outside, in achievements, possessions, approval. But true freedom is inward. It is in the rhythm of remembrance. In the courage to return, no matter how many times you wander. In the choice to cleanse, no matter how many times the dust settles. This is why the monks of old were unshaken. Not because life spared them hardship, but because they learned the art of return. They did not fear the cycle, they honored the rhythm. When pain arose, they breathed. When shadows lingered, they released. When chaos tempted them, they remembered, I am not the storm. I am the sky that holds it. And so even the smallest ritual became sacred. Dropping salt into water was not about superstition, it was about sovereignty. A daily declaration, I am not trapped. I can begin again. That is how curses break, not with fire, not with chance, but with remembrance strong enough to dissolve repetition. The path is not complicated. It is not hidden. It is simply lived. You breathe. You notice. You release. Again and again. Until the old curse no longer clings, until the pattern no longer owns you, until freedom is no longer a distant dream but a daily practice. The path unfolds quietly. It does not demand perfect conditions. It does not wait for ritual drums or sacred robes. It moves through your daily life, in silence, in rhythm, in intention. This is why even the smallest act carries weight. Salt dissolving in water is no longer just a gesture. It is a mirror of your inner choice. A reminder that release is possible at any moment, in any place. You are not bound by yesterday's mistakes, not chained by old pain, not cursed by unseen forces. The only true prison is forgetting, and the only key is remembrance. Mastery has never been about force. It is about steadiness. To breathe when fear arrives. To clean when chaos begins to creep. To release when weight presses down. Each act of discipline whispers the same truth, I am still here. I can begin again. Your life becomes your temple when you treat it that way. Folding clothes, sweeping floors, even flushing salt into water, all become invitations to return to center. When done with presence, each act becomes prayer, each gesture becomes offering, each breath becomes sacred. This is not superstition. It is alignment. The alignment of body, mind, and spirit. The awareness that every moment can be holy if you choose to live it with care. That stillness is not the absence of life, but the fullness of it. And so the curse fades. Not with fire or fear, but with daily return. Each time you release, you weaken the loop. Each time you remember, you strengthen your spirit. Over time, you discover what was hidden all along: you were never powerless. You were never trapped. The key was always in your hands, waiting for you to use it. So when the old pattern rises again, do not despair. Do not fight. Simply notice, release, return. Again and again, until the rhythm itself becomes your freedom. Thank you for walking this path. If these words resonated, take a moment to honor the teaching with presence, a breath, a pause, a release. And if this teaching has spoken to your spirit, remember to stay connected. There is always more to discover, always another step on the journey inward. Until next time, remain grounded. Keep releasing. And remember, you are not the storm. You are the sky.